Hello creatives, I'm Ari and this is Shamelessly Creative, and today we're going to do a Sketchbox unboxing. So this is the October 2020 Sketchbox. This month's art is by Beth Zerbis at Art by BZ. So if you're not familiar with Sketchbox, Sketchbox is a monthly subscription where you get a box delivered every month. This is one of my favorite boxes. That's why I feature it here on my channel. I've tried almost every major subscription box, and out of the 5 or 6 I tried, this is the one that I've fallen in love with. I've had a couple months, the last couple months haven't been my favorite boxes, but there's still supplies I'm going to use, well, except for the pastels, in August. Other than that, all the supplies in the sketch boxes are things I'm going to use and use again. And to me, that's the biggest criteria when picking out a subscription box, is to look over the boxes, make sure to check out past boxes, previous boxes on their websites and their Instagram accounts, etc., and see if those are supplies you're going to use. Otherwise, it really is a waste of money to get these. Unless you're just looking for an art experience, then, maybe that matters less to you. But for me, I want to use the supplies again and again. I don't want them to go to waste. Let's get into this box and see how it goes. I'll leave a link below if you're interested, and comment below if you received the Sketchbox or not. If you do, tell me what your favorite box has been since you started your subscription. I'd love to hear that. And if you don't, would it be something that you would be interested in? All right, let's get started. Our featured artist this month is Lil Chan, and there's the information. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Sketchbox, premium box, October ink. And we're not going to look at the other side just yet. So the first item out of the box is a Kuretake Zig Bakuchi Suzuri, and this is to rub ink on. So this month is all about ink. So we get the Sketchbox ink stick, and with this you'll add water to, this is called the land and this is called the ocean, and you'll rub here with a little bit of water and it will flow in here. So I'm going to go into more detail about Sumi-e. So if that's something that's interesting to you or you don't know much about it, stay tuned. Kuretake Zig Bakuchi Suzuri, retail price $6.20. It has a texture. This is made out of plastic. It is not stone. We have the Kuretake ink stick, custom made product, retail price $6. This is a solid Sumi ink stick. You add water to it on your stone and make ink. Just for your reference, this is called the land and this is called the ocean. And so as you grind your stick here, it will run here. You'll use some of this for your ink process. The next item is a Princeton brush, number 2. It's a plastic barrel, and remember, so like this tip is really hard right now, so make sure to wash your brushes when they're new. So we have our Princeton bamboo brush, size 2, retails for $5.65. The next item is calligraphy ink by Speedball in Scarlet Red. Not very full, but And I believe this is an acrylic-based ink. Of course, I have it all over my hands now, too. Next items out of the box are the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pens, medium, and a brush pen. They're $3.70 each. So here's the medium tip. And here's our brush tip. More like a felt and not an opening brush. Just so you know. So again, these retail for $3.70 each. They're pigment based. The next item is an Edding pastel pen in soft white, 1 to 3 millimeters. Here's the tip on that. So we have the Edding soft white pastel pen. Retail price is $3. It's a water-based pigment ink that produces light, semi-transparent white effects. So it's great to add highlights, but it's not necessarily going to be opaque like a Posca pen. The next item is a Higgins India Ink soft liner brush pen. Retail price is $11.30. Here's the brush end. I really liked using my other one. I think I have that out for my ink supplies for Inktober. The last item in the box is a Sumi-e custom item from Shamelessly and Sketchbox. This paper is specifically used to work with the Sumi inks. So it's a custom 4x9 pad. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but you can kind of see my hand through that. But it's more like a parchment paper, maybe. That's what I would liken it to. So that should be fun. And that comes in natural white. Retail price is $10.50. And our Sketchbox sticker this month. Grayscale. So these are the items in this month's Sketchbox. About a $53 value in retail price. Let me know in the comments below if these would be supplies you'd like to try out, or have you tried Sumi-e? Let's swatch these out and I'll give you a few pointers on how to load your brush, how to make your ink, and how to paint, how to hold your brush so you can do the more traditional Sumi-e and not just use it as a paintbrush. To get a feel for what Sumi-e is, let's go get creative. What is Sumi-e? So Sumi-e is an Eastern type painting. It's kind of like a Zen Buddhism type feeling. To me, it's like poetry, and you're supposed to bring yourself into that. And part of the kind of the Zen-ness of it is that when your brush goes on the paper and makes a mark, that there's only one mark it could make in that moment. Just, it's seeing the good in that moment. And so with Sumi-e, you're not supposed to go back over an area like you would if you were just painting with ink. Like in the Western art, we try to depict realism, kind of a 3D environment, 3D pictures. But Sumi-e is more about a feeling, of bringing a feeling and a moment into an art piece, sort of like a haiku, if you've heard of that in poetry, or if you're familiar with Zen poetry. It is that same, it's being very present in the moment and creating something from your surroundings, from your mind, but using your heart to connect with the art. And the white of the paper in Sumi-e is as important as the dark. It's part of the picture. It enhances the picture. So you're also, Asian art tends to have flowers, birds, landscapes. Those are the types of things you'll usually see in Sumi-e. Not that you won't see people. So the style of painting is heavily influenced by Zen Buddhism. The basic Sumi-e is using black ink only. However, black ink, as our sketchbox, has a scale to it. We can go from a very pale light gray to the blackest black. And that's what we're going to attempt today. So remember, the white space of the picture is not just like a blank space that's left like how we see it in Western art is empty space. But instead, in Asian art, it is seen as an essential part of the picture. They come alive and gain depth by the marks you make in black. So what would be, say, a picture of a fish, the white space provides the water. So it's as important to the whole of the picture as the dark lines you're making. So keep that in mind when you're creating your art this month. Sumi-e started as a Chinese art, and then it arrived in Japan, and then was heavily influenced by the Tao and by Zen Buddhism. And white space is looked at as an expression of the Tao or Zen, and looked at as a real flowing and dissolving into the nothingness and the existence of emptiness. And these things are found in both those traditions. So if you kind of think about this as expressing both the yin and the yang of things, the white and the black, coalescing together to produce a painting. And then it's like poetry that, let's say you see the geese flying south, and that inspires you in your heart, and that's what you put on the page. Again, those two elements are working together, not as separate. I hope I'm explaining this well. I'm hoping that if you've gotten this box, that you take the time to experience how, with simple lines and soft shades and intense shades, can be created from a sense of inner quiet. So find something inspiring about your day, about the environment around you, and then just sit quietly with your brush and start. So to understand kind of what I talked about, by quieting yourself and creating from this state of inner quiet, you bring the most energy and the most vitality to your artwork. And I personally believe that this is what you want to do every time you come to create art. A lot of us have been using art as a way to stay calm in such troubling times. And so now if you add in a little meditation, a little quieting the mind, and bringing awareness to your art making, whether it's using Sumi-e or any other of your art supplies, just sit and quiet yourself for a minute. Breathe in and breathe out, and then begin. And you'll bring more of yourself into your art. You'll be calmer sooner in your art process rather than having the art process draw that quiet out of you. You could kind of start the process by breathing and centering yourself and focusing in on what you're here to do. So along with the supplies that we received in this month's Sketchbox, the only other thing I'd like to ask you to pick out is a white plate. Mine is, just an old dinner plate that was cracked. So other than that, we have our ink stone or grinding stone, but in this case it's grinding plastic. This has some texture on it, but this whole process can be meditative. If you think about it in that way, as we go forward through this, as you're watching, just think about it as a slow process. And if you get impatient with yourself or want to go back over something, just remember to bring yourself back to that place of quiet. It is like poetry. It is being present in when you take your stick and you grind your ink, it's being present and watching how your ink is forming. It's watching it move from the land to the ocean and being present with each step of the way. When you're loading your brush, I will go through the details of how to load your brush correctly for Sumi-e, but you can do it any way you want. This is just probably more than you're going to see in some of the other Sketchbox videos if you're watching them to get ideas. And I just thought it would be fun to kind of, so even if you didn't get this box, but you've kind of been interested in making your own inks from these sticks, to take a look at, or if you're just interested in Sumi-e and it's something that sparks joy in your heart and you've always wanted to try, this might be perfect. Is just pick up one of these, a brush, and an ink stick, and you're good to go. So let's get started. So the only thing I don't have, which I was going to borrow my husband's, but he's out of town, so normally you have a felted surface, so you don't have that hard surface under. So if you have a piece of felt that you're not worried about getting wet or ruining, this would be a good time to get that out. It provides a soft surface. As I said, I don't have one, so it's not necessary, but if you are serious about it, and why I would get a piece of felt, is it allows some give in the paper and it keeps the paper kind of sort of lifted off the surface so the water doesn't soak through the paper and kind of create that bubbling so much, and so you don't get puddles on your paper. That's the purpose of having, and possibly a weight at the top. You know, you can use something you have on your desk, but you may want to weight your paper down. Other than that, I think we have everything we need to kind of get creative this month. So my only other suggestions is the felt and having a white plate. So if you're in a thrift store, think about picking up a white plate in their kitchen sections. Or if you have some on hand, of course, and they did what mine did and chipped. This was, I think, from IKEA. Do not microwave, at least this IKEA plate. It doesn't handle heat well, and it probably, it didn't say it could or couldn't go in the microwave, and we did, and so it cracked. Traditionally, and I'm not sure how this ink will be, and if it's formulated like normal Sumi-e or Sumi inks, but usually you have choices of 2 black colors. So you're either going to have and just like if you wear clothes at all that are black, you know that when you wash them over and over, some of your clothes go blue-black and some of them go black-brown. The same is true with Sumi-e. So they have sticks that are black-brown and sticks that are black-blue. And that's what's going to cause depth in your painting, is that color, I don't want to call it color shift, but the nuances in the color are going to create a more dynamic painting than if you just use the bottled Sumi ink. Now I was thinking this was Sumi ink, but this just says it is black ink, but I do know they have Sumi inks already purchased or already mixed like this. The sticks usually have those nuances of blue or brown, and the ready to use Sumi ink doesn't have those nuances. At least that's what we've found. So if you're wondering why you can't just go, you totally can. You can, you can use whatever black ink you have on hand and do this. So the brush, remember, it's not important the supplies you have. It's just, I guess, the intention and how you decide to use them. as you'll notice on my channel, I try to take everything to a watercolor consistency because that's one form of a medium that I'm comfortable with. It's a supply I'm comfortable with, and thus if I can make everything watercolor-like, I can figure it out and I can make use of it. So just because you don't have all these supplies, don't let that stop you from making Sumi-e. In fact, if you have any ink from Inktober, just use that and try some of these with your regular brush that you're using and see how you like it. And if you like it, then, then invest in a stone and other supplies. And again, there's, just like all art supplies, there's several levels, and some things it's okay to start at the bottom rung and get similar results. Some things you won't. Like I said, you won't get the nuances with a straight black Sumi ink, but with a stick and mixing your own, you get the full experience. So think about it like the difference. I don't know if you're familiar with tea ceremonies in the Asian cultures. Again, presence is going into each moment of that tea ceremony. And so that's where making your own inks or making even your own watercolors kind of grounds you in the moment and connects you with your supplies. I've made African drums and I love my drum. It's part of my heart and soul went into the making of that drum. It holds more meaning for me when I'm making music with it. So the same thing, when you're making ink with this, there's more of your time, of course, going into it, but there's more of your attention and intention going into the process. And so if you're short on time, definitely use this. If you want to level up your experience with sights, sounds, etc., maybe try this out and see how it makes you feel. And see if you like that. I'm excited about making watercolors for that very reason. I want to be connected to the supplies I use. I want to set good intentions in the supplies I make. With the stones, another point I want to make is the grind of the surface. So if you decide you want a stone, make sure that it's not too rough because the pigment particles won't break down fine enough and will kind of leave chunks in your ink. So we'll see how this works. So, and as I was mentioning, so the blue ink is made from the soot of burned pine wood. The brown ink is usually produced from the soot of the rapeseed oil. And the pigment particles are much smaller and thus reflect more light. Chinese painters and calligraphers usually are drawn to browning for that reason. Think of it like watercolor. Watercolor is very fine pigments, where poster color, not tempera paints, but real poster color from Japan is large pigments. So a thing to note also, if you are vegan, is that I don't know about Kuretake Zig. If I find that information out before when I edit the video, I will try to include it. But a lot of Sumi sticks include animal fats, which make them more susceptible to breaking down. They can dry out. So you should always cleanse your stick. So rinse it under water and make sure that all the ink particles are off the surface, and then dry and wrap it after it's been used. So another downfall to this traditional method is you really don't want to use the liquefied ink that has been standing around for a while, because the pigment does end up separating from the water. And in higher heat, it'll do it quicker. So if you think about that, old ink becomes dull and loses some of its brilliance after use. So this is not something where you're going to really want to continue to pour it out and reuse it. But I encourage you to try and see if you notice a difference in that compared to painting with fresh ink. So if you have this Sketchbox this month, try different things with it. Try blending like I mentioned. Also try remixing your ink mixture, and then also try saving it, some of it, maybe in a little jar or something you have, maybe with a little cup with plastic wrap, and see if there's any difference on your paper with the old ink compared to the new. As I said, I don't know if we're going to have that blue-black or brown-black shift or nuance with this, but we will see. So again, the ready-made inks are going to appear less three-dimensional than they would with an ink stick. So if you have ink and you have this box, try that out for yourself as well. If you want to discover what I was talking about earlier, the heart of ink painting from more of an Asian perspective or less of a Western perspective of just painting with ink, then I think it's important that you do grind your ink to bring your heart and soul into the process. But just think of that process as being part of your calming down period, a part of letting go of the world while you're circling your ink stick. So while it does take a little bit, think of that as the beginning of your quiet time. So while you're grinding, you could be visualizing the moment of your day that you're trying to recreate in ink. You could picture the bird you saw, or like, as I mentioned, I made an African drum, and part of that process was thanking the animal that gave its hide for the drum head. It was thanking the tree that grew the base of the, and everybody's hands that touched everything that came to create that drum. So, but the actual painting, you definitely want to proceed without hesitation. So while this part of the process can be contemplative and quiet, when you're actually doing the painting, your hesitation is going to show up in the painting. So when you're making your mark, you want to make it. And as I said, I believe I said before, that a lot of philosophies out there talk about how every minute we're alive is unique and cannot be replicated. Thus, part of the Art of Sumi-e is trusting that that mark you made was the best one. You could correct it like we do in regular art, make it look a little bit better, but there's something lost in that. So as you approach your art, do some that are just, you trust the process, you trust your learning, you trust the marks you're making, and try not to go back over them. So although you may make it more aesthetically pleasing, you've also lost something of the moment it was happening. And that's kind of like haiku poetry, is part of that catching the moment, not trying to make something perfect. So if we think about that for Instagram, catching a moment compared to perfecting the moment, there's two different things. So you'll also want to have some water on hand. A cotton rag would be good. So the inky things are going to be absorbed quickly. As I said, I don't have a felt pad handy. But if you have something on your table to hold it down. This is a Sumi-e paper for Japanese inking. But if you didn't have that and this was your first time going into it, there's something called gasenshi paper. Or you could use minimum size Japanese paper or blank newsprint will kind of create the very clean lines. A lot of watercolor paper will soak that ink in and kind of spread it, and you won't get those nice clean lines that you're looking for in Sumi-e. So another thing you want to think about is that as you dip in here with more and more water, you're going to dilute this ink. So you may have to refresh the ink as you're going. So you want to stand your stick upright and then move the stick in wide circular motions over the stone until you have an even and smooth liquid. Push this liquid into the deep part of the stone or the ocean, and you're going to just kind of want to keep repeating that until you have how much ever ink you think you're going to need for the playtime you want to have. So the success of your painting really can depend on how well you grind your ink stick. You don't want it too pasty, and so like in the winter when there's lower humidity, it may thicken up down here faster than you realize. So let's try this out. I will be leaving this real time. So remember, the more water that's in your brush, the lighter So see, it's not really dark yet. So we want to keep going. That's how you're going to know whether you're getting to the point you want to be at. Because you want this ink to be the darkest dark. And it's not, you know, like this hasn't worn down at all yet. See, we're getting darker. And remember, our goal is for the darkest dark. And this is the only way I know of testing, is to keep testing. And just note how long it takes you to mix your ink. I mean, not down to the second, but you know, how you feel, like, oh. So with my lighting, I can't really, I can see, of course, it's darker than the first few. I can't see if we're getting any darker here. And kind of like watercolor, you're kind of spreading that out. So how far should you take it? I guess wherever you feel like it's where you want to be. So let's stop there. We could keep going. All right. So I'm trying to clean out my brush so that there's no ink in it. Can you see that? So the first thing we should talk about There are 2 holes for your brush, but they're all going to be upright like this. So not like this, not like this, not like we do here where everything's really detailed. You're going to want to hold it about halfway up, and the beginner hold is kind of 2 fingers. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but it's like the soku grip. You're letting it rest against your ring finger, and you're kind of going to keep it in place with your thumb. So this will anchor the brush securely in your hand. So kind of like this. Can you see? I'm going to be scarred with that red ink all day, maybe for a couple days. So if you see that in the videos, it's just the red ink from my Sketchbox. So this is what we're kind of looking at, where it's resting against this finger. This is kind of a stability, and your thumb is kind of a stability. And then this one is just kind of holding. I don't, I'm not sure how to show so you can kind of see, but it's going to be up and down, maybe a little slant. And it's not going to be comfortable because we're used to painting like we do the way we write. So the more skilled you get, Tanku grip is resting it against your middle finger while holding it between your index. So you're holding it like this, and this gives you greater mobility of the brush. The middle finger is kind of your support behind. That feels more natural to me because it's more like a pencil grip, where the other one feels a little more difficult for some reason. But actually this is the preferred beginners. By holding it in this way, how you apply the pressure is how you're going to make the width of your lines. So more pressure, wider lines. Another way, so if you're applying pressure, if you lighten up and twist, so if you're going from thick line to lightening, we'll try that with ink too. So when we start from one of these 3 holds, the tip always stays in the same place. So how you load your brush is make sure for a small piece of paper you don't need much water. And then you're going to want to take the tip and you see how it loads only so far. All right, so let's start over. So first you want to fill the whole brush with water. So I have now soaked my brush in water. So now we want to adjust that water by tapping it on our paper towel or cotton. So if you're making a larger Sumi-e painting, you're going to want more water in your brush. If you're making a small painting like this, you're going to want less. Because of course you need more ink to go the distance, and we're about long strokes. So dip the tip of the brush in the shallow portion of the stone and only take enough ink for the first third of the bristles to darken on one side. All right, so load with water. You only want a third of the way up the bristles. This is where your plate comes in. So you're going to spread the ink to the base of the brush by dragging the bristles lightly over the plate. And then dip the end one more time in your ink. So that was too much water. So that shows you it's too dry. And see, so the problem I'm having here is that it's too even of a wash. I'm not getting that gradient that I want in my brush. So again, we load our brush, keep enough water in it so the ink flows smoothly. I'm really struggling with it. And you want that to spread. And then you want a little bit more ink. And arm off the table. So my goal is I'm trying to get this and I'm really struggling. And now I wasted 2 sheets of paper. Gah. So you may want to practice on something other than your good paper just to get a feeling. It's really awkward. I'm not sure how people do this. So 1/3 of the way. There, that's more what I'm wanting, but I don't know if I did it right. Now you can also use your Higgins to kind of do the same thing. So I think the effects are better here. So we have our brush, which isn't the soft brush Pitt pen. It's just the brush. I like the soft brush myself. So as you can see, it kind of adds a highlight, but doesn't make an opaque. Normally, I don't recommend dipping into your ink. I would not use your Sumi-e brush or your bamboo brush for this acrylic ink. I would use something else like an acrylic brush. So there's our little tests, and it is really hard. I'm wanting that extra line like this, like having a darker edge, because that's how you're going to get some of your, and my ink already dried, so it's probably been 10 minutes. So that's probably why it is best to push it into the ocean. So what you're doing is you're grinding the pigments into the water. And these brushes really sop up the ink. Just remember the amount of water you have in your brush will affect how much water will be pulled into your art. If your brush is too wet, you're going to want to move it over the surface quickly, like that. So just remember, pressure and speed is going to dictate, pressure, speed, and wetness are gonna, and how you load your brush is gonna affect line quality. So I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to get creative or if we should end it here. Just remember, the movement should come from your heart. So maybe close your eyes first. Feel, so it's something that you want to keep your arm loose and work from the shoulder, not be gripping. But it's easy for me to fall back into the gripping. See, if you try to reactivate the stuff on here, it does a little bit, but there's also some that gets chunky. So I'm really struggling with this, which I'm surprised. I can watch other people do this and I'm just always amazed. But my lines are getting thick. Maybe it's the paper. So your plate is also for kind of forming your brush and lightening your ink. I'm actually liking my results better on this. I feel a little bit more in control. Though it is warping quicker. So I really actually like this other paper better. This is what I use to do my fountain pens. It holds up really well to those. Brush holds a lot of water, but you definitely want some water. So again, dip it in till it's about a third of the way up. Those were my attempts. It definitely is something that's going to take some getting used to. I definitely liked this paper. It soaked in less, and thus I felt like I had more control and got more of the lines I wanted to make, rather than kind of the bleeding that happened on here. Can you see kind of how it, I mean, it's okay. These crisp lines are kind of what I was looking for. It definitely has shown me that it is not the easiest medium to learn. So for me, it's one of those patience, having enough patience to make art with this is going to take a bit. And because I made this a little bit longer to just kind of show you how to do your ink, again, move it down. I was just using it here, but I'd use a little bit more water and move it down into the ocean just to keep all your ink together so it doesn't dry out so much when it's spread out. And again, remember to rinse your stick and dry it off well before storing it. Oh, I struggled with this box because I see my husband really appreciates this kind of art. His stepmother did this kind of art, and it is something I've come to appreciate through him. And I love the simplicity of the meditation kind of idea of this, but in practice, oh, very frustrating. Like I made the little fish. I was trying for pussy willows, maybe a moon and a tree. I can do the bamboo with another brush, and it just wasn't working. So as I said, I really struggled with it. And maybe it's because I'm trying to hold it traditionally, and I kept finding myself going back instead of staying here and keeping my arm up off the surface and drawing. I kept finding myself going back to this and drawing, and then I would get thick lines. So it would be one of those things that I think if you're interested in it, to start and practice your lines. The ideal is to get shading all the way across your brush, so that when you're dipping, you have different shades in one brush load. It's not like you're soaking up all the ink and placing it, though you can. And this brush squooshes, so it's not like like it doesn't have the spring, it just kind of flattens. So it doesn't have the spring that I find in like a watercolor brush. And I'm not sure if that's because, and it sops up tons of water. So, and tons of ink too. And so for me, it's about making more, I want more shading, more a dark with nice grays in the middle. And I'm struggling to get there. Either my brush is too dry or it's too wet so for me, the Sumi part, I'm not appreciating very much. And so I think either I will make other art with this. Oh, I also tried the pine tree. But again, I wanted a nice dark line along this outer edge and a softer medium tone and then a light tone as a highlight. But being able to load my brush that way just didn't work. And then making the needles, up here, it ended up thick. Oh, my heart. So for a creative project, it did not go as planned. And you have to remember that that's okay. Like, this is my first time trying it. And although I know the history behind Sumi-e, and of course you can go online and look up what Sumi-e, and you'll get the idea of what, more a line like this, where there's a nice dark with a nice deeper gray or medium gray. And then, but if there was just another light gray, getting those, the scale, the values across a line, so you have the dark to light all in one brush stroke. That's what the loading is. And just to go over that one more time, my water is pretty gunky at this point. But load your brush with water, dip the end in your ink until it's about 1/3 of the way up your brush. And then use your plate to softly guide the ink up in your brush. And then apply downward pressure. Oh, and then dip it one more time and then apply pressure. So it's, it's just one of those processes that is going to take a while to learn how to finesse it, how to load your brush adequately to do that. Like if you had a real bamboo compared to a plastic, cheaper brush, is it going to perform differently? On my channel, you're going to see art supplies from every level, but there is a point to that too, is if your brush or your paper is hindering you creating the way you want, and you don't know that it's the paper or the brush or the ink that's hindering you, you would call it quits. You would just stop because it's frustrating. And it could be because you're not getting the results because of the supplies. It could be you just don't know how to do it, and maybe you need to take in more Skillshare classes about Sumi-e, or you need a teacher, or you need better supplies. And it just seems more difficult. And I will have my husband get out his supplies, and we'll try it with those because I know he has better brushes than this. And I want to see if the loading of the brush I wish I could show you what I mean, but if you look at Sumi-e ink, I guess this is a good example here, is how, see, like there's a nice other little line in there. So if you loaded your brush with water, with black ink, with water, with black ink, you should get a variation across your brush. And if you're holding it up, so this is kind of what I mean too, is I want that nice dark line along the edge where you can see that it's the edge of the stem or the leaf. I want that definition, and then I want the softness. I want that dry brush look as well. And it was just really hard to keep the variation. The ombre effect is basically what you're wanting on your brush. From clean water near the top to a medium. So it's getting, so the darkest is at the tip and it spreads to a lighter. So, I don't know. I could be here all day practicing, trying to figure this out. I'm not going to do it. All right, for the time being, that's all the fun I wish to have with this box. This box was anything but zen. This box had me less zen and more frustrated than I would have liked. So the zen experience that I was expecting to go into this activity with was lost on me. So totally lost on me. And my favorite supplies were the Higgins ink pen and the acrylic calligraphy ink in the red. I actually had fun making the blobs and I kind of made some birds. I love Pitt pens. I'm excited to try the Edding Inktober. This was my least favorite, but as I said about this box in general, I do tend to use all the supplies again. I may not use them in the way that this box was curated to use. I may end up using this on its own and just practicing brush strokes to get that color gradient that I'm wanting. So, not a Zen box, but Zen potential at some point. It looks so much easier. When you see other people do it that are good at it, it just looks effortless. Obviously, I'm not good at it. I actually kind of had more fun doing these little doodles at the end than I did creating anything today. So overall, our $50-some retail box. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Would you like these supplies? Would you not like these supplies? What do you think of Sumi-e? Is it something you'd want to attempt? Again, I haven't lost interest in trying because I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Not that, so more user error than supply error, but also I'm willing to also hold that possibility that the supplies aren't the best quality, and thus frustrating me in applying the ink to the paper and getting that nice layered effect. And again, my error is probably in how I'm loading the brush. I didn't notice much subtlety in this, but I don't know if I was ever working with it as dark as we had it in the beginning. And again, I would guess it has to do with the quality of inks. Whether this is good or bad, I don't know that. But I don't notice any nuancing. And because this paper soaks in so readily, I liked the crisper edges I got on the Premium 32 Hewlett-Packard copy paper, which again is paper I use for my fountain pen practice and inking practice for calligraphy and writing, and just playing with brand new inks I get for filling my pens, because it doesn't usually bleed through. You know, it's not great for water, but the ink here did not bleed through. The ink blobs here didn't bleed through. I mean, even the ink on from the water didn't bleed through, just the wetness kind of warped the paper. So if you want a cheap way to practice your calligraphy, get a ream of the Premium 32 paper. I'll try to link it to Amazon. I'm not sure how to, I'll try to leave a link to the type of paper this is, because it is great if you like fountain pens and you want to try a new ink in your pen and you don't want to waste like your Clairefontaine paper or your higher end papers to practice. It is great practice paper to test out your nibs, test out how smooth your pens are writing, etc. So I'm going to experiment more with the Sumi-e on this paper before I try this one again. I'm starting to learn never say never, because it just seems like things come around and I go, oh, I want to try that again. Maybe I can do it better. Maybe I can practice more with it and learn to like it. I'm also considering running a giveaway. My channelversary is coming up in November, towards the end of November, kind of right around Thanksgiving time. I can't believe it's almost been a year. So I was planning my first giveaway at 1,000 viewers. Stay tuned for giveaway information, because I will be posting about that somewhere in the next 2 months. And I want to gift all your generous comments and support on my channel with a giveaway. So keep an eye out for that video. So all in all, a good box. Supplies I'll use again. This one maybe not very often. These supplies will probably be in rotation for different things I do, and maybe even show up in my Inktober. I'm still not sure how often I'll be posting. Watch for giveaway information, and please share my channel. If you're enjoying it, I would hope that other people you know would enjoy it too. Please like and subscribe and hit notifications if you want notifications about the giveaways, and to catch all my Inktober postings. I haven't decided yet whether I'm posting daily or weekly, but we'll just see how it goes. And then if I don't even make that and just keep it personal, I will definitely do an Inktober flip through, maybe with some footage of some of my better pieces, because I do expect some ugly art this Inktober, because I want to up my skill level, not be as concerned with making a pretty piece. Best of luck, everyone, whether you're doing Inktober or Witchtober or whatever challenge you're doing. Good luck. There's thousands of great Inktober prompt lists this year. So have fun. Keep it fun. If it stops being fun, stop for a little bit. take a breath, and start again. That's my plan. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm Ari, and this is Shamelessly Creative. We just got creative with the October 2020 Sketchbox. Thanks for watching. Bye. It's Wednesday.